All right, guys. I was going to play for you a clip, but I don't think I'm going to have time to do it now. Maybe I'll try to play it later. Somebody told me that Donald Trump Jr. just got deplatformed, suspended from Twitter for playing a clip from one of the doctors outside the Capitol yesterday. I'm sort of shocked that they have gone to this measure. And I think maybe the only way that I'll be able to play a clip is to play Dr. Joe Ladapo, who's a black doctor, which is kind of astonishing to me that they're deplatforming a black professional in the environment that they're in the United States. But he's also kind of skeptical about some of the ideas that are being proposed for early treatment. And so maybe that's the only way I can get away with playing some of you. But he has such a great comment about the need for us to have a fulsome discussion about all of the different options. So let's see if I can play some of that. I watched the doctor video, so I know exactly why it was deplatformed. It's because they were promoting one particular type of treatment. And let's face it, there are lots of potential treatments out there. I have a doc who gives me regular advice on what is coming out on the latest studies. The steroid in the UK, he now says ivermectin looks like it has some efficacy in blood clotting, in addressing blood clotting, because that's one of the reasons why you end up with low oxygen in the blood, is that the virus causes blood clots, which prevents you from being able to transmit oxygen. What's another one? Interferon beta. We've just, in Canada, approved remdesivir. So look, there's lots of different potential treatments. In the absence of a vaccine, you need something that will either allow people to recover more quickly or prevent them from getting worse in the first place. So I understand why, when they were promoting just hydroxychloroquine, they ended up getting deplatformed. It wasn't just that; it was that hydroxychloroquine, zinc, azithromycin. They had one doctor who spoke very passionately about. I wish, in fact, they had led with this more measured doctor, because he is, I think, trying to get to the heart of why it's important for us to have these fulsome conversations. You just heard the Lethbridge mayor talking about how important it was. Everybody had a different perspective on masks. It sounds like they came up with the same kind of approach that they did in Edmonton. Masks on public transit and in municipal buildings. In Okotoks, they made a different decision. They're going to wait. Banff, they made a different decision. They're following Calgary, but they're also expanding it to outdoors. There's lots of different perspectives that come to bear on these discussions. And that's important. We have to maintain that open debate if we're going to find out what the right solutions are going to be. So I want you to hear what one of these doctors had to say, because I don't know if you're going to be able to find this audio now. But Dr. Joe Ladapo was explaining why it's so important for us to have the open discussion in matters of medicine. And I'm not sure why it is there is such a severe clampdown. I've never seen this before, nor is he, quite frankly. But I want you to hear what he had to say about trying to have some freedom as a medical doctor to talk about some of the options for treatment. That's that clip that I mentioned to you, Pat.
I'm Dr. Joe Ladapo. I'm a physician at UCLA, and I'm a clinical researcher also. And I'm speaking for myself and not on behalf of UCLA. So I want to say that, so I'm thinking of the people who are behind the screens that are watching what you guys are broadcasting. And I want to share with you, because there's so much controversy and the atmosphere is so full of conflict right now, that what this group of doctors is trying to do fundamentally is really to bring more light to this conversation about how we manage COVID-19 and the huge challenge. And that's what this is ultimately about. And bringing light to something means thinking more about trade-offs, about, one of my colleagues said, unintended consequences. And I actually think that's not even the right word. The right word is unanticipated consequences. Really thinking about the implications of the decisions we're making in this really extraordinary time that we're in. So I'm sure people are listening to some of the discussion about hydroxychloroquine and wondering, what are these doctors talking about? And, these are doctors that take care of patients, board certified, med school, great med schools, all of that. How could they possibly be saying this? I watch CNN and NBC, and they don't say anything about this. And that's the point. there are issues that are moral issues that really there should be a singular voice, So for me, issues related to whether people are treated differently based on their sex or race or their sexual orientation, I personally think those are moral issues, and there's only one position on those. But COVID-19 is not a moral issue. COVID-19 is a challenging, complex issue that we benefit from having multiple perspectives on. So it's not good for the American people when everyone is hearing one perspective on the main stations. There's no way that's going to serve us.
That's going to serve us. It's not a moral issue. He's connected something really important to me. He's obviously a progressive, right? So he's a black doctor, feels very strongly about issues of race and sex and sexual orientation, that there should be only one voice on that issue. So he comes from the progressive side of the spectrum, because we've been hearing that for a long time, right? But he says this isn't a moral issue. This is a challenge. And the more voices we hear, the better. But that is not what's happening. It's actually kind of remarkable. Every time I get a new video sent to me, I end up watching it as fast as I can to make a judgment of whether or not it's going to get pulled and censored by Facebook or by YouTube or by Twitter. And should it be that way when we're talking about medical issues? How are we supposed to get to the bottom of trying to understand what the treatment protocols are if we're not allowed to talk about the things that are showing promise? How is it that we're supposed to give you confidence that if you get diagnosed, what your likelihood of having an extreme outcome would be if somehow it's verboten to talk about that? Are we now also not allowed to talk about the alternatives? Is it illegal for me to be talking about Sweden because they take a totally different approach when it comes to herd immunity, wanting to expose the low-risk populations so that they stop being a vector of transmission to the high-risk populations? They don't support masks. I mean, Bill Gates today has come out and he says it's important for young students to return to school for in-person learning. Why? Because he's talking about the trade-offs. What are the unanticipated consequences of what might happen if we keep children in a state of terror for the next 2 years? So, guys, these are important conversations to have. And I do my best to try to bring information to you, but you have to understand my limitations, right? If this is a deplatforming type of discussion to have, we need to first get to some conclusions about what is the proper range of discussion we should be having on medical issues. I'm of the view it should be broader, and then we are all able to come to conclusions about what the best approach would be. But it looks like YouTube and Twitter and Facebook have said essentially whatever the World Health Organization and Dr. Fauci says, that's the only thing that is going to be allowed to be out there, and anything contrary is going to be censored. It becomes a bit of a problem with the World Health Organization changing its mind all the time. Okay, guys, now you wonder why it is the business community is feeling a little bit uncertain about the return and pessimistic about the future. Ken Colby is president and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce, and he joins us now.
Treating hydrochloroquine, and hopefully the American people will be able to see that. But that's another thing that needs to be called out. Something else. So the other day, a friend of mine sent me a video of a debate between Alan Dershowitz and or Horowitz. Which one is it? Thank you. Okay. Woo. All right. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about COVID-19 vaccination, and it was really amazing. Alan, I have just high regard for his intellect. I appreciate him because he is an original thinker, which we've lost. There's like the stock of original thinking has gone down during this pandemic, and I appreciate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because he is passionate, and his passion is combined with facts and a real passion for doing good that led to a really just knock your socks off debate about COVID-19 vaccine, which was the pretense, but really they ended up talking about a lot of different things. And what was really great about this debate is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. raised facts. He brought out some things and I'm not saying 100% of what he's said is factually accurate. But a lot of things he said were not only accurate, but things that I had no idea about, and made me think harder about how we think about vaccinations. Which, you know, I've got 3 kids. We do the vaccinations. So it's not. So and it's not. And I would not necessarily stop. But he raised some really important questions that we don't hear about at all, but are facts, and people should know, even if it makes it a little bit harder for doctors to convince patients to get vaccines, or for companies to make money from the number of mandated vaccines. And I think that's actually what we need for hydrochloroquine. We need debates, like debates between people who are, who take care of patients with this and have an understanding of the data that have been published so far, both randomized controlled trial and observational studies, and people who believe that, that it is not the answer and there's something wrong with it. And that kind of debate, those kinds of debates will, when viewed by people, it will make it easier to understand. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.